I think we're going to wing it. Oh my God.
This is what you wanted, right?
I guess this is exactly what I asked
Is there
for.
something funny?
Do I does not make you feel better.
Well, Brooke, you're the only one that doesn't know Dave. So Dave,
Hi, Dave.
Maloney, he's one of the few Trump supporting friends that I have left, probably.
Well,
on
now.
Facebook anyway. For now. Well, what's that supposed to mean?
Well, you know, I'm not going to be on Facebook very long. I've already got my Parlay account set up.
God. Are you serious? Going to go to your safe space? You're going to go to your safe space.
Safe space.
That's a Trump safe space.
Look,
yes.
I've just had enough of the somewhere where the conservative thought isn't being actively censored and demolished.
I hope this is just like Justin and David fighting the entire time.
No.
Wait a minute. I want this to be.
I need to go get
conservative. What?
Any conservative post is being
fact checking.
Fact checking.
It is. It's fact checking. What's your deal? You come on here, we invite you on the podcast, and you come with your. No, I didn't. Clearly, I didn't. I thought this was going to be way more kosher. I should have vetted better.
I wish you'd have recorded before he joined. We're missing some good material here.
Oh no, it's recording.
Perfect.
Yeah. Hey, listen. You wanted a different opinion, I thought. So, I live in a world where protecting the unborn is moral, and you live in your own world.
Really? Well, you live in the world where voting for a Nazi is apparently fine. So.
Good start.
I actually, when you invited me on, I went back and listened to some of your podcasts, and you guys are just a bunch of libtards. So I think probably it's best if I just.
That's the first time I've ever been called that.
What? Wait a minute.
What is happening?
Bazinga.
Oh my God. I barely held it together with that.
You didn't.
That's pretty good.
Do life's greatest questions seem like a mystery? Well, we're probably going to talk about it here at Appalachian Liturgy. Important questions like, are you a Jedi or an Imperial? Is oatmeal actually a breakfast cereal? Is a Catholic weekday really called a ferial? Did you know that Mr. Rogers was Presbyterial? So join us as we have a little fun talking about thy kingdom come. Appalachian Liturgy.
Okay. Welcome, everyone, to our next episode of the Appalachian Liturgy podcast. I am Justin Stacy.
I'm Brooke Ashley.
I'm Justin Bowling.
And today we have our friend Dave Maloney. He's a former colleague and hopefully friend of the show. I think you've been binge watching us over the past day or so.
I have.
Yeah. And, a Christian brethren and votes completely different than I do. So I thought this would be a lively conversation to have with you. So welcome, Dave. And do you want to give us maybe a brief history? I feel like you have an interesting history coming to America story. So,
yeah.
All right.
Sure. Thanks, Stacey. And I am. I think I'm interesting, and I think my story's interesting. Unlike some of you guys, I'm not from Appalachia, but I've been here 11 years now, and I know enough to know that it's never ever pronounced Appalachian region.
Yes.
I've learned that very quickly.
Yep.
And up until COVID hit, I was a season ticket holder at Dollywood and Bristol Motor Speedway. So I'm really trying my best to fit in and be a good immigrant. And as we've talked about, I'm not from this country. I'm not from this country originally. I grew up in Western Canada. I grew up in a church-going family. We were of the evangelical kind of flavor of Christianity. Grew up in a church that was a combination of full gospel. I don't know if you have that down here, but that was a denomination up there. And I spent some time in a Pentecostal church, and from there moved out to Calgary to go to school. And while I was there, I got involved with the Foursquare Church, and from Calgary, moved to Denver. It was interesting. My wife and I both got job offers. I met my wife in college, and we both got job offers in Denver. So as we were trying to figure out if it was really God's will for us to move to the States or not, we both got job offers at the same company on the same day. So that became to us a pretty clear sign that that's where he was leading us. We moved to Denver and started attending a Southern Baptist church. And from Denver, I have another rabbit trail we can go down. That is the story of how I got from Denver to Southwest Virginia. But short story, it was a God story. And when he brought us out here in 2009, we hooked up with a church that was part of the Southern Baptist Convention. And I've been serving there for, golly, almost 11 years now.
That's Highlands, right?
That's Highlands Fellowship, yeah.
Yep. Awesome.
Which, when we were looking for churches, we were involved in a church plant in Denver. And it was Southern Baptist Convention, and we found that the statement of faith was something that aligned with everything that I'd been taught and raised and believed. So that's why I looked for another Southern Baptist Convention church. And of the churches that I looked at, Highlands was the only one with a functional website that had, and this seems crazy, but there was two pieces of information that I think a church website ought to have: an address and a meeting time. And of the 7 Southern Baptist Convention churches in Abingdon that I was researching from Denver, Highlands was the only one that had those pieces of critical information. So that's where we went. And long story short, we've been there for over 10 years.
Great.
Awesome.
Aren't you involved in the like the audio video production part of it as well?
Yeah, I love technology. I love bells and whistles and lights and dials and knobs. So that was one of the first places I volunteered. I'll tell you a quick story about that too. When we first set foot inside Highlands Fellowship, I was a little bit distressed because I come from a really small church, 16 families was the size of our church in Denver. And I was very involved. I was on the elder team. I was the treasurer. I was a Sunday school teacher. And I walked in the doors at Highlands and everything just worked. Everything was beautifully done. I walked in and said, there's nowhere I can contribute. I have no skills that can make this any better than it already is, which is rare. Usually when I go someplace, I'm like, I can fix that and I can fix that. That was not the case when I walked into Highlands. But shortly after being there and being distressed about not being able to serve, they took a week where they gave all the volunteers the day off. And we walked in and none of the volunteers were doing any of the things that normally happen to make the church function. And anybody that's been involved in a church, you know, the volunteers are the ones that drive it. It's not the paid staff. They do a lot of work, but they can't do everything to make Sunday happen. So I walked in one week and all the volunteers had the day off, and the pastor came out, and I swear he pointed right at me and says, "This is what Highlands looks like when you're not serving." And I was like, okay, all right. So I filled out my little card and gave them my name and address and said, I want to play with the technology stuff. And that's what I've been doing since then.
I'm going to remember that tactic.
Yeah, it was very effective.
That's really good.
What it looks like when you don't volunteer.
Yeah.
It works 20% of the time. You're still getting
20% of the time, 100% of the time. Oh, that's great.
That is good.
I
Yeah.
love that.
So that's kind of my journey to the States. The whole immigration thing, I mean, we can spend a lot of time on that if you want to, but the kind of the condensed version is I came in under a NAFTA visa as a Canadian citizen. I was able to come down as a skilled foreigner in North America. That's a 1-year visa. I got sick of doing the paperwork every year. So I moved to an H-1B visa, which you hear about sometimes in the news with technology workers, especially. It's often used to bring in foreigners to do technology work, a lot of times from India, because there's a billion people there. But I also qualified for that H-1B visa. And that was a stepping stone to a green card. And then the green card was good until I realized I really, really wanted to vote and serve on juries. And I've been able to vote several times. I've still not been summoned for jury duty. I was summoned twice before I was a citizen. Wow. And was not able to go and serve. And that annoyed. I wanted to. I'm a nerd sometimes.
Wanted to too. My wife's been summoned multiple times, and she hasn't been able to go. Both times when she was pregnant. But I've wanted to go. I've never been summoned myself, so I'm with you. I feel your pain.
As someone who has worked in the court system, I never want to serve on a jury.
I've served one time, and actually didn't mind it. I thought it was an interesting experience, and it's definitely a civic duty. But what was crazy?
Well, let's pivot that back to the Christian side of this podcast. I grew up. I spent a lot of my formative teenage years in a Pentecostal church, so I am very good at being judgy, and I feel like I would be. We just lost all our Pentecostal viewers, right?
So, all two of them.
Yeah. So I feel like I'd be a very good juror because I'm very good at being judgy.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that you get to do it since you want to do it so badly.
Thank you.
Yeah. Speaking of, civic duty and doing patriotic things, didn't you work the polls this year?
Can we rephrase that? Sorry. I worked at an election precinct on election day.
Does work the polls mean something different to what I'm thinking of here?
It just may.
Probably.
It'll come to you in about 20 minutes.
That's a different podcast, Stacy.
Yeah. So voting, of course, being one of the primary drivers to becoming a citizen. And once you're here, voting is a civic duty that we all have. And a lot of us took seriously this year. And another civic duty is to serve. And I'm too old and fat to be in the military, but I can certainly sit at a desk and check people's IDs. So one of our mutual friends has been an election worker for quite some time. And he kind of inspired me to do service on that level. So this year I was able to, it's funny, I answered a Facebook ad. There was a Facebook ad for election precinct workers, and I clicked on the button and they called me. So that was
nice.
Cool.
Yeah, that's really good.
So did you say, you may have said this and I missed it, but did you say how long you were here before you got your citizenship?
Yeah, I did not say that. I moved to the States in 1996 and became a citizen in 2013, just a few months too late to vote against Obama. And I was able to vote in the 2013, 14, and 15, I call them practice elections, before voting for a president in 2016.
Yeah, so it took me, I registered to vote in 2004. That's when I turned 18. And it took me until 2010 to actually vote, because for those 6 years, I just didn't care. I was one of these spoiled Americans who didn't care about voting. I didn't care about politics. I didn't pay attention. And it wasn't until 2010 I started paying a little bit of attention, because that was when Morgan Griffiths was running against Rick Boucher. And my family was huge Boucher fans. And I knew that growing up. They would always talk good about him. And then I knew that, there was some credit that he got for bringing the company that we used to work for, and I still work for, and to our area. So I had a loyalty to him, and so that drove me out to the polls. And then ever since, I've been wrestling with politics, trying. I think I found my identity pretty quickly, but. And maybe that's one of the things we should talk about is having an identity in politics, because I think that's one of the problems. So that might be a good place to start.
That's easy for me. I've been all over the place.
Well, I saw something really interesting lately that I don't remember who shared it, but someone shared it probably on Facebook. And it was something someone had written in a Bible about where your love and allegiance belongs. And at the top was God. We love God because he loved us first. And then you have your family. You love them. They probably love you too. And that's your next responsibility, to pour out your love. And then you have your friends. You chose them because you love them. So you owe them some loyalty and love on that level. And they may or may not love you back. But that's just the way that life is. And after that, you have the community around you. And we love them because God told us to love our neighbor. But there's a good, strong probability they're not always going to love you back. But that doesn't matter. And then at the very bottom was politics. And we're called to participate in politics, but not to love our politicians, because they don't love you at all. They love your vote, and that's about it. And that was amazing. That kind of hit me hard, because sometimes, and especially, and I'll own it, especially the Trump camp, it's really easy to get caught up in the cult of personality. because he's got a strong personality and an attractive personality for a lot of people. I know for some people his personality is repulsive, and I get that.
Yeah.
But going back to The Apprentice, he's a good showman. He knows how to do things to entertain people, and that was interesting to me. Wasn't my first choice in the primary. In fact, out of the 15, I think there was 15 Republicans running in the primary. I think he was my number 15.
Yeah, I remember 2015, 2016. I don't know if we chatted any, but I remember our Facebook pages, and it seemed like that was something that stuck out to me. That you wasn't really a fan of him. It's just that he's who you got stuck with.
Yeah.
But I think that goes back to you probably identify yourself as a Republican and a conservative, right?
I consider myself more as a conservative than a Republican.
Okay, so it really doesn't matter what party. It's just a conservative person running on whatever ticket, and it will probably always be the Republican Party unless it's
probably
I don't know, independent.
I'm hoping for a third party.
I'm hoping for a third, fourth, and fifth party.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know we had discussions about this in 15, 16. We had a lot of conversations in the break room.
Mm-hmm.
I like the way you put that, though. I think we even mentioned something along those lines a few weeks ago, or a few podcasts ago, probably. Like, they was talking about the way that, God assures that we love everybody is that we start by loving those closest to us. And that's kind of like the order of operations you put there, and it fits that same sentiment really well.
So one of the things that I've been thinking of is, like, how should we view our political opponents? And I don't even like calling it the opponents, but that's just the reality, Should we view them as neighbor or enemy? Because number one, Jesus told them to love both, right?
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
It's not going to matter too much from a Christian perspective.
Between the two?
But it's a lot easier to love your neighbor than it is to love an enemy. Even though that we're called to do it, it's hard to do that. It's hard to turn the other cheek. But if we see people as neighbors, then that's a lot easier to do, right? So how should we be viewing? Dave? How do you view me? Since I'm probably your polar opposite on things.
Yeah, listen. One of the things I'll say is I have, and I don't know if you know this or not, if it's going to come across weird or stalky, but I've always enjoyed your company. At the place that I used to work at, that you still do, and so from that became Facebook friends and followed your Facebook. And I have really appreciated seeing your journey the last few years of really wanting to delve into what it means to be a Christian, what it means to know the scripture, and what does it mean to go to church and all that. And I've really enjoyed seeing that. So I have always viewed you as a brother in Christ on that regard, first and foremost. And then as a confused Democrat later on, and there's hope for everybody. But I think there are certain issues that the Republican Party absolutely has a lock on from a Christian worldview, and I think there are also one or two issues that the Democratic Party has an absolute lock on from a Christian worldview as well. And that makes it really hard for me to view someone who claims to be a Christian and claims to be a Democrat. It makes it very hard for me to see them as an enemy, because I know that if they claim Christ first and they still vote Democrat, that they're seeing that part of the party platform, which is not the most important part of the voting ranking your voting positions. It's different than mine. Right. For me, and I'll say this up front. I didn't want to call you a baby killer because abortion's a real serious issue for me. Right. So I didn't really want to make light of that. Yeah. But and I even wrote a couple of jokes and I'm like, oh, that's not consistent with my views. I can't say that. So for me, it's always going to be the person who says and potentially, hopefully acts on reducing abortions to the most extent possible. And we've had discussions about that, I know, as well. And I think that really follows the science. If you look from a scientific point of view, a clump of cells that's part of a woman would have the same DNA as the woman. But a clump of cells that has unique DNA and a distinct heartbeat and a different blood type is not part of the woman. It's a question of geography, not of autonomy. So for me, anyone who platforms on a position that life begins at conception and we will do what we can to protect the least of these and the most vulnerable, will get my vote. And that's I was really hoping in 2016 that Hillary would take a softer stance on abortion so that I could vote for her instead of voting for a man who was in his personal life a train wreck, even though I agreed with what his policies were. I was hoping, I looked at Hillary's platform in 16, and she had changed her stance when she spoke at the DNC, and I don't know if it was 8 or 12, but she made a comment that abortion should be safe, legal, and rare.
I remember that. Yeah.
And I said, I disagree with safe and legal. I don't think murder should ever be safe or legal. But rare, I can agree with you on that. And I can find some common ground there. Let's work on making abortion rare. I can work with that. And in 2016, when she ran, rare was completely out of the Democratic platform. It was abortion should be safe and legal and available to everybody, and it should be paid for by everybody. And that was, for me, that precluded my ability to cast a vote for a candidate with that position.
So I think what you said a minute ago is really important for us to talk about when we look at people who view things differently than us.
Right.
And one of the things that you said is that you looked past the politics to what Justin believed as far as his religious beliefs, or and I think from my perspective, what we are doing is we are making caricatures of people who believe differently from us, and when we're not putting a real face and a real person to that, it makes it really easy for us just to disregard them as human beings. And I think social media has allowed us to do this, but I think we've always done this a little bit, is we align ourselves with like people. And so the only place that we really push back on that, maybe in a family, but usually folks in a family kind of believe, along the same lines. But the workplace used to be a place that we did that, our neighborhoods when we got together. But now so much with, and we can talk about how we, travel here and there and past other churches or whatever. But we tend to worship with people who think like us. We hang out with people who think like us. With social media now, we're doing that more and more, and we've lost the ability to have a civil discourse. In my family, we always knew that one set of my grandparents voted Democrat, and we would joke about so-and-so is going to cancel their vote out, but we could at least talk about it. And when it got heated, that was still your grandparents, right? And we've lost that. We've really lost the ability to do that. And I do think we've demonized people who think differently than us.
Yeah, if we want to talk about identity just a little bit, there was one other point I was hoping to make, and that was, Stacy, you said something about, I found my identity, but when it comes to voting, and I know you meant your political identity, but we have made so many things our core identity, whether it's our sexuality or the way we vote or our skin color or anything like that. And what I've tried to teach my kids, they're 20 and 17 now, and hopefully they're turning out okay. What I've tried to teach them is that your identity is not, a straight white American. Your identity is not, the son or daughter of a Republican voting person. Your identity is that you are a human being made in the image of God who loved you so much, he sent his son to die for you so you could spend eternity with him. That is your identity. And when your identity is that, no bully at school can change that. No one can say, "Oh, you're fat." I'm like, no, I'm not fat. I'm a child of God, made in his image. We love so much, he sent his son to die for me so I can spend eternity with him. That's my identity. And the taking of other things to be our core identity has made it very hard to have civil discourse. Because if someone says, well, I'm a gay American, that's my identity, I can't have a discussion about what a biblical ethic of sexuality looks like without attacking their core identity. But I can come into agreement and say, your identity is you're a human being made in the image of God who loved you so much he sent his son to die for you so you could spend eternity with him. When you have that as your identity, that prevents us from seeing people as enemies, and it prevents us from taking other things into our identity that make it impossible to have a dialogue.
I think you're spot on. And I think not only do we have to remember where our identity comes from, but we have to remember where other people's identity comes from.
Yeah.
And in that is where we can find common ground. I deal with people who make poor choices all the time. That's my job. That's what I do.
You've been to Walmart?
Yeah, I'm a greeter.
That is itself a poor choice.
Yeah. You know, and one of the things that we start our day out with every day at the center is our prayer is that we will have the eyes of God, the ears of God, the heart of God, and that we will see people for who they are, for that they are a child of God when they walk through our doors. And that is our centering prayer before every single day. You know, and it really changes the way you interact with people. You know, when you keep that in your forefront. I mean, I'm just convinced of it. It's the basic tenet of authentic Christian hospitality as well.
Yeah. So
I
go ahead, Billy.
I was gonna say, I think we also like wrap so much into assumptions about why somebody may have made a different decision too. Because there's a lot of different reasons that a Christian may have come to another decision. Like David was mentioned, like there's a lot of issues you may be able to pick, you know, here and there that you could justify your decision if you only look at those. But we feel like the justification that we give is always the right one. But we might not see that we ourselves could have blinders on and not be seeing the same thing that somebody else could be seeing. It's also always hard to see our own blind spots. We can see somebody else's blind spots really easy, but our own is, you know, difficult. We may also like have just a totally different practical voting strategy than something else. I may agree 100% with everything that David's saying, but I also might not view it as a binary choice between two people or something like that and come to a different decision. I may think that it's okay to eliminate somebody and eliminate another person and then not choose either. You know, those are different things that people can come to based off of, you know, even coming from the same point of view, the same type of starting point of view, but just using different practical strategies.
So my favorite thing, even among Christians, when we're disagreeing about something, is when somebody looks at me and says, well, I have prayed about it and searched scriptures, and this is what this is it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I haven't prayed about it.
Yeah.
Like, you know, so I don't know.
So something that I've prayed about, and I think I've told Brooke and Bowling this before, but Dave, something I've prayed about over the past many years is abortion. I've prayed that if I'm wrong in my vote or if I'm wrong in my beliefs, because I think I've mentioned to you before, I'm uncomfortably in a gray area on that, right?
Sure.
And that if
think
I'm wrong,
most Americans probably are.
Right? Yeah, I think most Americans are. That if I'm wrong, for God to convict me on that, and I'm still praying that prayer because I'm convicted on many things, but
Sure.
That's not an issue that I'm convicted on. So it's something that I wrestle with, and I think everyone should, but and that's one of the things. When I said political identity, I did mean for voting. I don't like the idea of saying that it's my total identity. This is just a small part of what I am, or how I am. One thing that I've noticed about myself, and this is me trying to take the plank out of my eye, the log out of my eye, is that over the past many years, I have been someone on social media who stirs the pot.
What?
and I don't need to do that anymore. Like I'm to the point where, like, if we are serious about trying to come to some kind of compromise, some kind of common ground, I need to quit trying to poke the bear, because it just ticks people off, and I don't have anyone specifically in mind. Usually when I'm making a post, it is specifically about Trump, or it's specifically about Republicans, politicians, that is. But the application of it is it's going to hit the people who voted for them, because and this is just something that I'm coming to terms with, because when people would do it on their on the other side, it would hit me, and I would get so mad. I would be like, they're hitting me, but here I'm doing the same stupid thing.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I've done over the past many months is I'm trying to take off as much political jargon from my Facebook account, like the about section and whatnot, as part of my identity, because I was actually identifying myself as a Democrat first. Even I put a Democratic Christian American, and boy, is that not wrong of me to do, right? Like, and I didn't see it I
One
just
step closer to being a Republican is not being a Democrat.
but
He's going to get to you about the end of the podcast.
no, I don't think he is. But it's just it's one of my faults, and you know, and if I've ever, Dave, if I've ever said anything or shared anything that has actually offended you, then I apologize, because you are definitely one of the few that I've always trusted, and
Thanks.
you know, from the opposite side, and you know, I obviously love you and care about you. So you know,
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate that. There probably have been things that have offended me, but I've learned a long time ago, just keep scrolling. And it doesn't mean I don't love Justin any less. It just means, oh, he said something that bugs me, whatever.
Yeah.
And I kind of learned that lesson for myself. I'm not trying to show off. And in 2012, I honestly thought that the Romney-Obama binary choice was Romney was running on a platform of what's good for the country, and Obama was running on a platform of what can the country do for you, specifically with Obamacare and other things. And I honestly thought that the country had chosen to not go for the what can I do for my country platform of Romney, then they had gone for the what can the country do for you platform of Obama. So I was distressed. And from 2012 to 2016, my Facebook feed was full of people gloating and mocking Romney for being a bad candidate. And Obama is the savior, and he's going to, you know, reverse climate change, and the oceans are going to start receding. I think that was his own words. But it was just full of nastiness towards people like me who had hoped for Romney to win. And it bugged me. It really did. So when Trump won in 2016 on election night, I had to make a very conscious choice to not be that guy, and to not rub it in anybody's face. I'm like, wait, and I think I even made a post to this effect that said, people who did not vote for Trump tonight are feeling the same way as I did 4 years ago, and I'm not going to make your pain any worse. Thank you for voting. I'm glad my guy won. I'm not going to deny that, but I'm also not going to rub it in your face either. Let's move forward and try and unite as a country. And I've tried really hard the last 4 years to not share all of the Trump memes that I have found to be hilarious in a pro-Trump way. I may have clicked like on some of them, and I really tried not to be real bad about that. But I will say, in 2016, after the election, someone actually tagged me in a post with a swastika on it, saying, "This is what you voted for." I'm like, no, it's not. That's not what I voted for. I voted to save babies. I voted to have a strong immigration policy and a strong border defense system, and I voted to try and do things in a conservative view. I certainly didn't vote for a swastika or for Nazis, and that one hurt. That one hurt fairly bad. And I talked to the person privately, and they eventually they did it quickly. Not eventually. They quickly apologized and untagged me. But that was the kind of thing I was trying not to get into. And I've tried, and I've probably failed in the last 4 years. And right now, I may just be old. You know, I'm in my mid 40s now, and I've been through the W years. Well, I'm older than Stacy and bowling. Yeah.
bowling's like 12.
Yeah.
Yes,
well,
that is my age.
Yeah. He looks it. So I made it through the W presidency years. I made it through the Bill Clinton presidency years. I made it through the Obama presidency years. For anyone that voted differently, you survived the Trump years, and I'll survive the Biden years. All 4 of them.
Yeah.
Because
Bazinga.
See, I've heard you all say a few things that I think is worth pointing out. And Stacey, you talked about living in the gray, you know, and that is something as Americans we aren't comfortable with.
Right.
We're not comfortable being in that not yet, or just not making our minds up. And I think too, we have also lost the ability to let people change their minds. Like, you don't know this, Dave, but I voted the gamut. I mean, I voted for Perot, and I voted all over the place. But what I've been able to do is educate myself and change my mind on things. And sometimes it would swing back the other way. You know, some people call that fickle. I say, I'm just educating myself. Like, I'm listening to people's arguments. I'm rolling this around. But we don't tend to let people do that. We don't let people mature or change their mind. And that is not a good policy for us to have. But we don't like being in the gray. And so many of these issues, there's a component of gray to it. And I think we sometimes don't acknowledge that. I mean, I very rarely hear people say, well, in my opinion, or from my point of view. And, it goes back to surrounding ourselves with people from different points of view.
So something you brought up, Dave, is healthcare. And so with Obama, you thought that he was just wanting to hand out free things, and we were wanting to take free things. What would be your view on healthcare? I know it's different, but
Sure.
like, I'm sure you want everyone to be covered. Like,
oh, look at this giant can of worms. Yeah. So healthcare's really, really complicated. And it'd be a nice, easy cop out for me to just say, I'm not smart enough to figure it out. I don't have the answers. What I can share some observations, and this is purely anecdotal. Okay. So, take it for what it's worth, which is probably not much, but, my parents still live in Canada. I grew up there where they have, what some people call free healthcare. It's really, single payer, government, subsidized. It's not free unless you don't have any income. You pay, a percentage of your income as a deduction on your pay stub.
Yep.
But my dad had cancer 20 some years ago. He's fully in remission now and still kicking. They thought his cancer might have been back at one point a few years ago. So they wanted to do an MRI to check his spine and see if the lymphoma had reoccurred around his spine. So they opened up their appointment book and said, all right, we can get you in for an MRI in 6 months. How does that work? And he's like, well, if the cancer doesn't kill me by then, that'll be just great. When my parents were visiting me in Colorado, my mother twisted her knee, and we took her to the urgent care, and they said, we need to do an MRI. How does 1 o'clock work for you? And for me, that was kind of an illustration of the access to services that's available in a free market system where there's some competition, and in a system where the government runs it. And of course, as a good Republican, the government can't run anything well except the military, and that's untouchable, right? So we can't cut that budget. $30,000 toilets, and $4,000 hammers, whatever. So that's my little anecdote about my parents' actual access to an MRI when they needed it. One was for a sprained knee, which wasn't important. She could get in the same day. One was for possible resurgence of cancer. It was a 6-month wait because they had one machine in the province of BC or whatever. And you just had to get on the list. Now, I don't want to see anybody not get healthcare, right? I really struggle with, is healthcare a basic human right? I struggle with that. I'm probably in the gray on that.
Yep.
I think everyone ought to have access to it. I think it's humane to be able to treat people, but it's not free. Just saying it's going to be free for everyone doesn't magically make it happen. So I don't know. I know that before I moved here, I had the impression from watching 2020 and Nightline and all the other quality nonfiction shows on TV that when I moved to the States, I would most likely be shot within 1 to 5 years. So I was trying to get back to Canada within 2. So I would, roll the dice and play my odds of not getting shot. And then if I ever did go to the hospital, I would immediately be bankrupt, because that's what happens. You go to the hospital in the States and you become bankrupt. That's the way it is. Now, I recognize that I have been, I don't want to say, I really hate the word privilege. I recognize that I've been fortunate to have a good job with good health coverage. And I've been in the hospital many times. My family has all been in for various things, and we're not bankrupt. Sometimes the bills are a little bit high, but I know that we have access to the best medical care and the best doctors in the world because they come to America because they can make the most money here than anywhere else. And there's something to that. But when you have a system that incentivizes the best care and the best equipment, you're going to get the best results. And the way I understand it is that ERs and hospitals cannot turn people away. So the myth of people who can't get health care is really a myth. You can always go to the ER and get care regardless of your ability to pay. And that hospitals have a certain percent of their budget that has to be given to Good Samaritan care, which is care they do at no cost. My daughter was involved in one of those last year. She and a friend were in a bad horseback riding accident, and the friend's family is in the ministry. They don't have a large income. She had to be flight for life to a hospital, and she spent several weeks and lots of surgeries, facial reconstruction, all sorts of things. And the hospital called them up, inquired about their family situation, said, "Oh, you know what? You're going to be our Good Samaritan case for the week or for the month or whatever it was." So in my experience, and I know everybody's going to have different, everyone's going to probably know people who have not had good stories and good outcomes. Yeah. But the experience I've seen has been that the system generally works, and it's expensive. There's a way more money than I wish would come out of my paycheck to pay for it, but I don't know how to get the best care in the world without paying for it somehow.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it in the fact that your I guess beliefs on healthcare really comes from your personal experiences. Even and mine does too. You know, my grandma, before she died, she fought tooth and nail to try and get a health insurance, and it was actually Medicaid that she was trying to get on because she didn't work or anything. So that's a government controlled plan, and they were fighting her tooth and nail, not wanting to do that. But she ended up getting covered, but it was kind of too late at that point. And with myself, we used to have good health care that I would consider good health care when I first started working. Then we went to high deductible plans, and with my wife's a type 1 diabetic, and we always meet our max out of pocket within months.
Yeah.
And it's just a flood of bills immediately. Yep. And that is really what motivates me to want more of a Canada system, because of my personal experience. So I completely understand where you're coming from there. I'm definitely not in a gray area on that issue. I feel like it's black and white for me, but I do understand gray areas. So, yeah.
All I would say is go and spend 20 years under the Canadian system and see if that's still what you want.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair.
It's one of those, I spent 20 years under the Canadian system and 20 some under the American, and I'll take the American one for myself and my family.
Yeah, and like if I ever experienced a situation where a parent needed an MRI and I couldn't get it for 6 months, that's insane.
Yeah. To
me, like I would be furious over that, and that may mold my view on it. But yeah, so I'm sorry you experienced that, but
it all worked out.
Yeah.
And this is one of those things where it's easy to say it worked out because my dad survived and he made it long enough to get the MRI. The cancer was not back. But even if it hadn't worked out the way it did, I've got Romans 8:28 kind of stenciled on my wall behind me here. And all I believe God things all works together. That thing, I believe that God works all things together for good. And even if it had been a different outcome, it would have worked together for good somehow.
Yeah.
See, this conversation makes me think about early in American history. Your hospitals, your medical care came out of your churches.
Yes.
I mean, they were the ones giving the medical care, training the doctors. I mean, y'all know me. I love John Wesley. And, one of the things that his circuit riders carried was a physic book on how to heal. I mean, they weren't doctors by any stretch of the imagination, but they were some of the more educated folks. And so I do think as Americans, the church has given a lot of its authority over to the government. So we've created these humongous programs, whereas this used to be the church's domain,
Right.
And it makes me a little sad now that we don't do that, or that our programs in the churches are based on the level of income that the government has said is livable. And, I mean, working in what I do, that's what people always say. Well, what's your income threshold? What do you let people do? And I'm like, here's my philosophy on that. And, but I wonder where we as Christians, where do we fit into this? Like, I can see where you're coming from. I can also see the fact that a lot of the families that I work with go to the ER or hangnail, because that's what they're used to. I think it is getting better. I think our healthcare system is doing a better job of advertising and using urgent cares and You know, it used to be you could only get your bills paid for under the Good Samaritan laws if you went to the ER, but now that's changing. So some of that's just education. But where do we as the church, where do we fit into this? You know, because a lot of our folks on that low end of the spectrum are not getting any preventative care.
Yeah, I think you're entirely right. That's kind of one of the questions I had too. And yeah, I think you're 100% right about the Christian ceding ground, because I think it's not even just an American phenomenon. I think the very first civilian hospitals were Christian hospitals. There were some military hospitals in Roman times, but there were no civilian hospitals until, medieval Christians started these anywhere. And I do kind of wonder, like what you're saying, like has the blending of a lot of historical Christian actions with, the state kind of been why Christians themselves have blended their theology with like politics as more than they have, in the past? Or is that not a thing that's happened? Have Christians kind of made these? Yeah, I guess that's my question to you all. Have Christians blended these together, politics and their religious beliefs, more so now than they have in the past? Is that a problem? And if it is, how do we kind of fix it?
Is it a problem? Like for me, an issue like healthcare is a Christian issue that I vote on. I feel like it's a Christian issue. I believe it is, and that's why I support universal healthcare, because I think it's the Christian thing to do. Now, if the churches could provide something similar, then I would be completely open for that. But I just don't believe that the churches can. That I haven't seen any evidence that the churches could do that type of care. But and I think our healthcare system is broken in the sense that everybody's overcharging just across the board, right?
So Abby, my daughter, had surgery this summer, right? So we're just now getting all the bills in. So one of the bills was over $40,000. Now, after our insurance did their discounts and then they paid, it ended up being like $4,000.
Yep. And
we only paid like $200 of that.
Yep.
So, and that was just one. There's 4 others. So that surgery cost almost $200,000 if just by the. So yeah. So overcharging.
Yeah, we just had a kid, so definitely seen those bills. Yeah, I think that's kind of the conundrum that I have a hard time with. Like, our Christianity should have us acting out in the world. Like we should be taking our beliefs and, working for our neighbor, trying to make things better for them, spreading the gospel. But when that becomes the same thing as when that becomes synonymous with like the political state, then I think it becomes a problem. And I think it's kind of sometimes hard for people to draw the difference. At least it seems so in my view, that people kind of make those the same thing. Like you make your identity, kind of what David was saying at the very beginning, I guess, to loop back to that.
So, and I think, for every presidential election that I can remember and everyone that I have studied, the faith background of the person running has always come up, whether they were Catholic or non-religious or Methodist or whatever.
Mormon.
Mormon. That was a big thing with Romney, right? So I think my biggest concern with what I'm seeing now is this crazy evangelical kind of thing that Trump is our savior. And I have a family member that believes that Trump is God's anointed person that is going to bring back this country to its Christian values. That is kind of where I started saying, wait a minute, like this is getting
Cyrus.
This is getting too interwoven. Thoughts?
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think every president is appointed by God for that season for some purpose, and whether it's a purpose for good or a purpose as a bad example, I'm okay to rest in that. I'm okay with if it turns out that Biden has won all the recounts and all that, and he's the next president, that God has him there for a reason, and it's our job, as it says in Romans, to submit to him and obey him and honor him. And I don't know that Trump was necessarily any more anointed than any other presidential winner. I think God put him there for a season for a reason. And for me personally, and this will get to some of the practical voting, is to have 3 potential pro-life justices on the Supreme Court is worth putting up with all of his Twitter shenanigans for 4 years.
So
I've been kind of shocked at some of the stuff that I've seen about that fellow believers are sharing about how, my favorite one right now is that as the king was anointing Saul, God was anointing David.
God was preparing David. Yeah.
And those kind of things I don't think are helpful to the discourse that we need to try to be having as a country.
Well, part of that comes from when your identity is so wrapped up with the political party that when you lose, you have to find some way to make sense of it. And like we've said already, that shouldn't be the case. Our identity should not be wrapped up in a political party, and it should make it easier for us to move on when our person loses.
There was everybody was ready. I was going to say there was an article from a conservative evangelical radio host, I think Eric Erickson, if you've heard of him, but he wrote something that was very similar like that. I actually thought was really good. He himself was a Trump voter, but he was actually trying to lower the temperature a little bit by saying that, he said, back in 2008, I believed if, the Democratic candidate won, the country was going to end. In 2012, I believed that the Democratic candidate was going to win, the country was going to end. It didn't. God's bigger than what our plans are. Even if we see no practical way for the country to continue if your preferred candidate loses, God's bigger than that. Like if that's his plan for the country to continue, he can make it happen. He rose from the dead. Like this is nothing for him. And I thought that was a good way to look at it. If we're not seeing everything, as Christians, we shouldn't see each election as like the end all be all. This is the final judgment type thing. It's not. Like we can make our stand and vote our conscience and vote what we believe our interpretation of scriptures tells us we should vote. But if that's not how it works out, God's still going to be in control.
So one of the things that I like to rant on a lot is that in America, we are always looking for the end times. Yeah. I feel like that's just ingrained in our culture, in our Christian culture. We're always looking for a rapture. We're always looking for, the next sign of the end times. And I just feel like this goes into our politics. We're looking for it. We're looking for a mark of the beast. And I don't think number one, it's not healthy. I've went down this road before. It's not healthy. Finally, I came to a belief that I don't necessarily have to look at those things. I believe most of Revelation is historical, except for the very end. So that has gave me a level of comfort to where I don't need to look for these things, because I believe Jesus is going to come back like a thief in the night. But it's not going to be this trial period or anything like that. I don't have that belief anymore. Dave, something you said about Romans 13, I just wanted to maybe dive into that a little bit, because we've discussed this in Bible studies before on Romans 13 on the idea of obeying the government. How do you view that in a regime? I'm not going to say the Trump administration, but let's actually say Nazi Germany. If you lived in Nazi Germany, if we all lived in Nazi Germany, how would you view that line of scripture?
Yeah, for me, it's pretty simple. If it contradicts clear Christian teaching, then we don't obey. And that's as long as it doesn't contradict clear Christian teaching, then we obey.
Great.
Yeah.
That's as simple as I've ever heard it. Because I've definitely heard people just abusing this Romans 13 to fit their mold, to where you always have to obey. But when they say that, they're always talking about the president or the party that they support.
Yeah.
And Paul wrote this in the Roman Empire, where Christianity was illegal. He also wound up in jail after writing this at some point. So, yeah. I think that should answer the question, that it's not some kind of absolute, like, you have to go against what God commanded you to do, because he absolutely did not.
Yeah. So I guess one of the final questions is how do we unify going forward? Is there any way that we can, specifically as the church, but I hope that we could be the shining light on the hill for the nation to show this is how you unify, because I feel like in the Protestant realm of Christianity specifically, we might not be the best examples of how you unify. Right.
Just because there's 1,000 denominations?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Now, I think most denominations will acknowledge that we are all in the body of Christ,
Right.
but we still split, and we are still not attending church together for one reason or another. And I don't know that that's a great thing, honestly. So how do we go forward?
Yeah, I'll take it as the guest. I'll let you guys wrap up. It is your podcast after all. So the way we unify is there's a couple ways we do that. Number one is we need to find people that think and potentially vote differently than us and get to know them as people. That's number one.
Absolutely.
If you demonize people, if you only hang out with people who are the same as you and think the same as you, you'll never be any good at unifying anything other than, I don't even have a good punchline for that. Dang it. I was going to go somewhere good. All right. So I don't know, no punchline on that one. But the second way we unify is by finding things that we can agree on. Like I said, when Hillary gave her speech at one of those Democratic conventions where she said abortion should be safe, legal, and rare, I disagreed strongly with safe and legal. I agreed absolutely with rare or eliminated. So I found something I could agree with, and that would be where I would focus on my efforts to try and unify. Right now, it looks like we're headed towards a Democrat president and a Republican Senate and a Democrat House of Representatives. So we have people that aren't going to agree on a whole lot, but I bet they can find something to agree on. And I hope that's where they focus on for the next 2 years until Republicans can take Congress back.
Or until January when Democrats get the Senate.
Oh, Lord. I'm going to interject here really quick. To your corners, boys. I agree with you. I do think that. I think, too, we have to quit listening to people and just being ready to respond. Like, we have to actually listen and not be having our counter argument already in our head. And I feel like that happened this political season. I mean, they had the debates and, really, was anybody's mind really changed? I mean, I think most people came there, and it was hilarious because I was watching my Twitter feed, and I was like, are these people even watching the same thing? So I think we have forgotten how to do that. I think we feel like we have to come in with our minds made up and be ready to defend our position at all costs. And I think we've got to somehow stop doing that.
Yep. Agreed. Go ahead, Bun.
Okay. I was going to say, I think I had kind of two things in mind too. Like we should always try to see the best in what someone else did or said or voted. It's always easy to find what's wrong with it, but if you try to see where they're coming from or what is the best possible interpretation of what they voted for, like the guy that said that, David's the swastika guy, that's clearly not trying to see the best into what he did. You could try to see it from somebody's point of view. And then I think what you're going back to when you're talking, it kind of reminded what you're saying, Justin, talking about trying to unify. Like, I think there's two wrong ways to unify. It's a hard question to answer, but there's two very wrong ways to unify. One is the one you're talking about, just going your separate ways. Everybody, if you disagree with each other, just go your separate ways. Don't try to convince somebody they're wrong. Don't speak your mind. Don't stand up for what you believe in. We shouldn't do that as Christians, obviously. We should stand up for what we believe in. We should speak where we see wrongs and try to right them. So that way, going that extreme is wrong. But then there's the more historical way of doing unity wrong, which I think, if you were I'm coming from the Catholic point of view, probably where that would historically be wrong is trying to force somebody to believe what you believe. And I think that's kind of where our country stands at the moment a little bit too. We want to force, their beliefs down somebody's throat from a political point of view. We need to grab power at all costs or something like that. And so it's kind of an escalation of, bad words towards each other. And I think everybody wants to, blame somebody else for starting it. And surely from my point of view, it might look like you started it. And from your point of view, it might look like I started it. But just like Christ turned all the worldly things upside down on its head, it's harder to actually stop the cycle of, raising the temperature. And so like that would be the Christian way to do it. If we take that first step to not raise the temperature, then I think a lot would change.
Yeah. I think the teachings of Christ is what we need to lean on here. I think loving our neighbor, loving our enemy, and turning the other cheek. And I think turning the other cheek is going to be the best example of what we can do to unify at this point. I'm very encouraged that Biden is talking a lot about unification and unifying the country. Like, I think that's just wonderful that he's doing that. But turning the other cheek, when I see something, I just seen something a while ago, someone shared, and it was actually Travis Tritt, the country music star. And he was basically saying that we don't need to unify, that the other side was, militant about, name calling and all this and all that, and that there's no reason why we should unify with these people. And I was like, this is horrible for someone of his status to say that.
Trouble, if I've ever heard it.
Yeah, exactly. Here's a quarter. Call someone who cares. So that's my main point. And my second point is we all just need to play more board games. Like when COVID is over, we just need to sit down and play some board games, because Dave can contest
everything.
That works. You're on mute, by the way, if you were
talking, but I'm just agreeing.
Yeah. I think you were probably playing board games before me. I don't know, like when you started, but like even at the office.
Before you were born.
Before I was born.
I was about to ask, was that an old joke, or were you trying to?
No, I meant like at the office. So, we started playing board games at the office in the evenings or whatever. And I feel like you were a veteran then of the level of board games that we played.
Some of us haven't stopped playing board games during COVID, just so you know. It's possible.
I have.
Small groups get people who aren't sick.
I have just been too afraid, really, to venture into that. I miss it so much. Like the last time I played a board game was in March, and they're just collecting dust at this point, and I miss it.
I can't figure out how we have not figured out how to play a board game virtually.
Well, there is ways. Yeah, there is ways. I'm not a fan virtually, honestly. Like you miss the in-person aspect of a board game. And so I've tried to do like Tabletop Simulator, and I just don't really like it. Like it just, I don't like console games either. Like just, I buy every new console and then it collects dust. It's a doorstop for me, because I don't like sitting around playing a game. Even if I'm talking to someone multiplayer, it doesn't feel like it's social.
It's almost like we were created to be in fellowship with each other.
Right.
I know, right?
Sorry, she was clawing at my leg.
I have one doing that to me too.
Wow. All right. Well, this was a really, really good discussion. So we've still got a top 5. So let's segue. Appalachian Liturgy Top 5 Debate. To our top 5. All right, Dave, you helped us come up with this topic for our top 5 this week. So it is limited menu items from fast food restaurants. And I will say that I cheated some, so sue me.
What a surprise. Stacy cheated on his top 5 list. It's a good thing I'm sitting down from that shock.
Yeah.
All right. So my number 5 limited availability fast food item. This may surprise you guys, anyone that knows me, is a salad. Wendy's in the summertime always has a fantastic berry salad. And it used to be like the strawberry salad and strawberry blueberry salads. It's always some variation of the summer berry salad. That's my number 5 favorite limited availability fast food. Usually I'm dieting during the summertime, so that hits my fancy at that point in time. The next one is one that comes out sometimes during Lent, is the Long John Silver thick cut cod. Fried fish is about the only way I will eat fish, and their thick cut cod it's amazing. It's just really, really good. And we lost our Long John Silvers here in Abingdon. I think, Stacy, you might still have one up in Lebanon. I don't know if it's still around, but we lost ours. So I can no longer get the thick cut cod. Number 3, this is not something specific you order, but it's something that comes on a lot of their items. It's the Arby's brown sugar bacon. And you can get like the brown sugar bacon BLT and the brown sugar bacon and cheddar, beef and cheddar. But that brown sugar bacon, it just takes just when you thought bacon couldn't get better, Arby's dunks it in brown sugar and makes it even more amazing.
That's a great commercial.
Yes.
Okay.
You know what the thing about Arby's is that I don't like is they don't offer Pepsi products. now. At least the one
It
in
used to have
Abingdon does.
Pepsi. It used
Yeah.
to be amazing.
Yeah.
That's because
Yeah.
Coke is better.
You can
No,
still
it's
get
not.
Pepsi. You can still get Pepsi with your Arby's sandwich if you go to the Arby's Classic at Tennessee High, because they have Pepsi at their concession stand and they have the Arby's sandwiches. So I will every year get a just for old time's sake, an Arby's Classic roast beef with a Diet Pepsi.
Very
and post
nice.
I post it to my friend who is the director of marketing for Arby's in the Tri-Cities.
Very good.
Make Arby's great again. Number 2, I have to have the Lord's Chicken on here somehow. So the Chick-fil-A peach milkshake is my number 2 favorite limited availability fast food item. And there should be absolutely no doubt as to what number 1 is. It's coming back December or early December is the McRib. And I've had more McRibs in my lifetime than the Surgeon General recommends. There's no reason I should still be breathing. There's no reason my heart should still be functioning the amount of McRibs I've had. They're fantastic. When I went on a low carb diet, I used to order 2 McRibs. And my boss at the time said, Dave, you can cut the carbs if you just toss the bun. So I was like, ooh. So now my go-to during McRib season is to order 2 McRibs, throw one of the buns away, and make it a double-decker McRib on one bun because
Very
low carb
good.
is healthy.
Yes.
So there you go. There's the list.
Very good. I'm actually on a low carb diet right now. I've been for a month and a half. Lost 20 pounds thus far.
Nice.
Wow.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
And if I can cheat, well, let's see what you guys do. I'll tell you my cheat item if you guys don't have it on your list.
Okay. All right. Brooke, do you want to go?
Sure. So my number 5 are the chicken snack wraps at McDonald's. The grilled chicken snack wraps, because they don't always have them.
It's true. Yeah.
And my number 4 is something that I don't know if it's a limited edition or if they've just quit doing that, but it's the Cine Minis from Burger King.
I
What is
remember those.
Cine Minis.
Yeah, I used to get those in
Yeah.
college all the time. I forgot about
It
those.
was like a 4-pack, and it was just like the middle of the cinnamon roll. It was the best part.
Interesting. Yeah.
So my number 3 are the nacho fries from Taco Bell.
May they rest in peace.
Yeah.
The number 2 are Arby's mozzarella sticks. So they are. Oh, sorry, the cat kicked the computer. So they used to have them 5 for $5, but that's like years ago. It tells you my age. But my number 1 is the McRib, and it has to have extra pickles on it.
Very good.
That's correct.
All right. Bowling, you want to go?
Sure. Yeah, I told Stacy I struggled with this one too because I don't eat a whole lot of fast food, and I guess what I do eat is always like the things that are normally on the menu. So
We had that same conversation earlier.
But I started off number 5 with the nacho fries. Taco Bell is one of my least favorite fast food to eat, but I did like when they had those, so that was nice. Number 4, I went with the pumpkin spice latte because it's pumpkin spice season. I don't particularly care for it a whole lot, but it's it's kind of an icon at least, and it should be mentioned. Number 3, the double down, because we're talking about low carb diets at KFC. I got it a couple
the
times.
chicken sandwich without the bun.
Yeah, the double chicken.
I
It actually
understand
wasn't
that
bad.
reference.
Yeah. But number 2, onto the Shamrock Shake at McDonald's as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And number 1, McRib, because it should be.
I had
Well.
the Shamrock Shake on my list, but I felt like 2 milkshakes was probably pushing the boundaries of good taste.
Yeah, I had as an alternate on mine the pumpkin pie from McDonald's too, because when I was in college, none of those McDonald's near Blacksburg knew of that existence, and every time I would try to ask for it, they were like, pumpkin pie. I didn't even know we had pumpkin pie, but they always had pumpkin pie around in fall. I feel like around here, but yeah. Anyway.
All right. So on to mine, and just a disclaimer that you will need a DeLorean to get most of my items. So that's the cheating part. It's not limited. It's non-existent anymore. So my number 5, this is limited for sure. Ice cream cones from McDonald's. There is there's no ice cream machine that ever works at McDonald's, so it's limited.
As somebody who worked at McDonald's for many years, I can attest that this is true.
Yeah. All right. My number 4 is the McRib because I like it, but it's not my absolute favorite. So it's number 4. My number 3 is a chicken salad from Long John Silver's. And I used to get that when I was in college all the time. And it was just a salad, but then they would put, the chicken planks cut it up in there, and it was the best salad I've ever ate. Honestly, I just loved it. My number 2 is fried chicken and biscuit combo from Hardee's.
Yes.
Right? I mean, honestly, it was really, really good. I mean, probably
Oh
not.
yeah.
Yeah. They had it up until early 2000s, maybe.
When they
That's
went through
cut it
their
out.
whole like thick burger remodeling or whatever, reimagining them themselves.
Yeah. So that's my number 2. My number 1 is the Super Bar at Wendy's. Does anybody ever remember that?
Absolutely.
Yes.
I loved the bar. I would always get the desserts, like the fruit salads and stuff. That was amazing to have at a fast food restaurant.
Chili. Put chili on your potato.
Yes.
Well, those were all good discontinued items, Stacy, but that was not our list today.
Yeah.
Exactly. I told you I cheated.
You fighting me on oatmeal being a cereal.
I mean,
Oh, I'm glad we get back to this because oatmeal is not a cereal.
thank
And I
you.
was so disappointed I
Thank
couldn't
you.
chime in on that podcast.
Thank you. There you go. Apparently,
That's
that is a controversial thing.
Can I get one more go back on the top 5s?
You
The
absolutely
Big
can.
Bang Theory theme song is one of the best sitcom theme songs ever. Not only is it topical to the show, it's unique, it's original for the show, and it's by a Canadian band. So what's not to like?
There you
I
go.
like that you threw that last one in, even though that's probably a little more.
Here's a free pitch to do a podcast for yourself, Dave.
Yeah.
Is to just critique our podcast.
Yeah,
Every
watching
week,
liturgy
Critique is
response.
not the right word, but maybe a response podcast.
response podcast.
I keep
Here's what
wanting
they
to
got
jump
wrong.
in and be like, oh, I wish I was on that episode. No, and most often it's not what you got wrong. Most often it's that's a really good point.
Awesome.
All right.
All right, so now let's come up with a final list. McRib is our number 1. I already know that.
Just like
What else?
Nacho fries appeared twice.
Yeah.
Okay, we can do nacho fries.
and a couple of milkshakes. I'm okay with the Shamrock Shake. I'm really disappointed that nobody else had a Chick-fil-A item. Bunch of
I
heathens.
tried to think about
Well, what other limited item do they have?
Oh, they have there's a peppermint chocolate shake at Christmas
They
time.
have a spicy tortilla soup in the summer that they don't have.
Oh yeah, I have had that. That is good. But, yeah, we can go shake. I'm fine with the peach milkshake. That's one of my wife's favorites, so I feel like she can get a half vote.
Okay, so peach milkshake. What else? Any votes for the Super Bar at Wendy's?
You know, I had a Wendy's salad, so I will consolidate my vote into the Wendy's.
You
Super
could get a
Bar.
salad at
You could
on the
make a
Super Bar.
salad from the
You
Super
could.
Bar.
You could
Yes.
put chili on it as you wanted to make it a taco.
Exactly.
If it makes us feel better, we can call it the salad bar.
All right, one more. What we got?
We've got a couple of chicken items. We have chicken snack wraps and
That's a good one.
the fried chicken and the biscuit and the chicken salad.
I could live with the snack wraps.
Yeah, I could too. I've missed getting chicken snack wraps at McDonald's. I used to get them all the time, and then they just quit making them.
Coming back.
I hope so.
I hope so.
All right, so our 5 is McRib, nacho fries, peach milkshake, Super Bar at Wendy's, and chicken wrap. No.
Should have been McRib.
He's not wrong.
That's true.
They're coming, guys. They're coming.
All right, so my cheat item was going to be Pal's Cheddar Rounds because they're limited to breakfast time only.
Mm.
Yes.
Are they?
Yes.
Oh,
You cannot get them after 10:30.
I didn't. Yep.
Interesting. Something else I miss is Taco Bell offering breakfast.
They had a good breakfast.
They did. I got it quite often,
It's
and
unique.
yeah. Oh well, I'm hungry now. So.
Yep.
All right. So Dave, thank you so much for
Yeah,
being.
thanks, Dave. That's
This
fun.
was a-
Absolutely. I
very
thoroughly enjoyed it. And I thoroughly enjoyed my research listening to your past podcasts as well.
Awesome. So I hope you continue listening to us, and when the time's right, we'll have you on again and talk about something else.
Sounds great.
All right. What's your cat's name, by the way?
This is Fortune. She
Fortune.
knows your name.
All right.
She looked at you. You said it. She's like, what?
Hi, Fortune. Okay, well, peace be to you and have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.